Okay, this meeting is being recorded. Okay, so hi, I'm Edgar Carrot, and I'm happy to have you in this webinar introducing our Lore's creative writing program at the JTS, and the people you're going to hear speak today, much more eloquently than me, are a, Lisa Springer, who's the dean of division of lifelong professional studies. I had to read it to get it right, and I must say, like a wonderful and close friend of mine. I think that there is something that when you take a program, out of people's mind and kind of bring it to life, it brings people close. And Lisa, who had at least so many programs, feel differently about it, but me, I'm very monogamous. It's the first program I ever released, and Lisa, it's really amazing to work with you. And which brings us to Shalom Auslander, that was born in 1970, not a moment too soon, and really is an amazing and wonderful writer that I read The Hope, Tragedy, and Element for my foreskin and the Beware of God, others and the other stories. I really said, "Oh my God! Like I wish this guy could teach me how to write." So he won't teach me how to write, but he's right now teaching other people how to write. And now this evening we're going to speak about this new baby that was born this year and that we're still celebrating. So, Sharon, now save me from this.
Um, First thing I guess I want to say is, Lisa, that title sounds completely made up. Is that a real title?
Well, all titles are made up, aren't they?
No, I mean like made up like a half hour ago.
No, no, no. We made it up a year and a half ago. We made it up.
Okay. All right. Okay. So what should we, I guess, I think you should sort of lay out what the parameters of our talk are going to be about, other than trying to convince people to sign up.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I think I want to talk about I want to take up what Edgar said and say also it's so incredible to work with both of you and thank everyone for coming. Um, I want to take up what Edgar said. The baby was born not so long ago and is still in its infancy, the MFA program, and but was much anticipated like many babies. So it started about maybe 2.5 years ago. I started meeting with Jonathan Safran Foer. We started imagining this. And then it became a reality this year. I think my first conversations with Edgar were in February, and and then we launched in March, and we had our first students in September. So it's a really, really fast rollout. And I think so for the parameters for the conversation is to talk about why we created it, what it is, how it's different, why it matters, if it matters, etc.
Right. Um, well, I remember when Edgar emailed me to see if I wanted to take part in this new thing. And he said, "Do you want to be a part of this thing at the Jewish Theological Seminary?" And I remember, I think I said this to him. I definitely thought it. I was, those are not the three words you put in an email to get me to sign up for something. All three of those words made me a little nervous. But now we are one semester in, and I'm so happy I said yes, because it's been incredibly fun. The writing and the growth that people have had is really remarkable to see in a sort of a low res program. Um, but when you and I first spoke and you asked me why I was doing it, I was very honest, and I just said I just want there to be better books so I can go read them. I feel like fiction, and not just Jewish fiction, which I'm sure we'll talk about, but fiction in general, um, uh, could use some energy, can use some fire. And although I have my problems with the Jewish religion, um, there's something about Jews being troublemakers that I've always liked.
Mhm.
And I saw that in fiction when I was sort of teaching myself and reading on my own. And that's something that I want to try and that's what my goal is to try and encourage more of that.
Yeah. No, I remember you saying that, from the beginning, things Edgar has said, things you've said, and also my own desire from the beginning was to make a different MFA program, one where people were exploring things as opposed to trying to fit into a mold. And recently, Edgar and I spoke with the students, and it's incredible. You imagine you're going to create something, and then it actually happens. People were saying, I didn't think I would write this way. I'm not trying to write pretty sentences anymore. I'm trying new crazy ideas. So that was our goal, and it feels like we're achieving it, which is kind of, I don't want to be boastful, but it really is incredibly gratifying to have
Yeah.
people say, they're being transformed and they're doing things differently.
Yeah, and I didn't want to be a part of that pre-existing system. Yeah, Flannery O'Connor was once asked if she thought that writing programs ruined writers, and her awesome answer was not enough of them.
Mhm.
And I've always sort of I remember, I didn't go to college, let alone MFA, so I found my way to literature because it was a way out of the sort of suffocating, uh, oppressive religious world that I found myself in. And when I started to find uh, writers who um, felt like my community, it was
Mhm.
life changing.
Mhm.
The first was Kafka, who I didn't even realize was Jewish until much later, but I was 16 at the time. I had no idea. Um, and then Beckett, who might as well have been a Jew, and for all his death fixation and hating his mother, but there is this energy and fire in it, um, that I still find myself kind of pushing myself to
Mhm.
emulate, um, and desperately searching for other writers who do that. I'm not just returning the compliment, but when I first wrote a short story collection, my publisher said, "Oh, you need to read this guy Edgar Carrot." I couldn't believe it. It was like finding a long lost brother. It was like, oh, finally somebody's just not doing the Iowa writer thing, and it's not being precious, but it's being incredibly heartfelt and uh,
Mhm.
different. I was reading recently Milan Kundera's The Curtain, and he talks about the first time he saw a play by Ionesco, and he describes it as an explosion of imagination and disrespect.
Mhm.
And I thought that's if I had to sort of write a slogan for what I'm trying to teach and do, it would be that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I have questions about that, but I want to just say I did go to college and I did go to an MFA.
I'm sorry to
And
hear that.
yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Um, and I won't name my MFA, and in many ways it was a really great experience, but I'm on the administrative side of the equation, and so many creative writing programs create non-creative ways to have it happen. So you're talking, Shalom, about the actual work. But then there's the structure also, which I think is really important. And I did a lot of research when we were launching this program, and there are programs that say you have to pick nonfiction or fiction, and you have to know which one you want, and then you have to stick to that. And that feels really uncreative. And I think from the beginning, we thought, don't pick, explore, and maybe you do some combination of things. When I went to my MFA, I was writing a novel that was a weird novel, and I was told really the MFA couldn't manage a novel because it was too long, and I had to write stories. And I had to write stories, and I had to learn craft. I had to learn that Iowa thing, right? I had to learn how to make really, beautiful sentences and it was really, I think I did not want to create that. So I feel like we've created something really, really different from that.
Yeah, and that system, it was ludicrous back when in the ancient times when you and I were college age, but or MFA age, it seems even more archaic now because writers can't get away with that for the most part. And not just can't get away with it, there are opportunities in different forms. You know, my feeling, and I write fiction, I write nonfiction, plays, screenplays, Substacks, I write whatever I can, because each of them do something different, but they're part of being a writer right now.
Mhm.
And that's you know, there's parts of that that are unfortunate. It'd be nice to just sit and write long tomes endlessly, but I'm not sure that was ever the case.
Right.
Twain spent half his life on book tours, you know, pushing his book. He was a performer, and maybe this all lies at his feet, but I don't think so. I think it's always been this thing. And nowadays, if you're going to teach writing in such a narrow space, I don't really think you're preparing people to go out and have their work found or seen.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, so we wanted also to have this session be pretty interactive to the extent that's possible on a webinar. So Ellie, if there are questions for Shalom or for me, feel free to interrupt us and to ask us what they are. Because I was thinking I have questions for you, Shalom, when you say you were inspired by those writers, then like what did you do with that? Like what did that mean when you saw, Kafka,
Yeah,
Beckett? What did
yeah,
that, or Edgar?
yeah. Well, Edgar was in my earlier 20s. In my late teens, it was there was a sort of a Venn diagram of literature and comedians um, um, and nonfiction writers that all sort of and or music. I'm sorry, like punk and rap that all felt they were doing the same thing, and I wanted to know how to do it. So when it came to Kafka, I read everything, and then I read everything about him by academics who got it all completely wrong, from my point of view, um, and didn't see the human behind it. They were very obsessed with other things that didn't seem to me to be what a very young man who he was would be writing about. And I started to take them apart. Some stories I rewrote by hand just to get a sense of how the hell is he doing what he's doing. I did that with plays. I did it with Beckett and Godot just to sort of see what it was, and then spent a long time. The way I describe it now is just running headfirst into a brick wall, trying over and over again to get a voice to come out.
Right.
One of the things I like about the MFA is that the people tend to be older,
Hmm.
certainly older than I was at the time. That was high school. And I think voice and perspective come with a little bit of age. It starts to ratchets up as you get older and older, and then you hit like 60, and it all starts to go down. But up until that point, you're gaining wisdom, and it's not for nothing that so many of the great novels and plays were written by people in that age group. So I was reluctant to teach for the most part because I was picturing something that this isn't,
Hmm.
which was, you know, here's the dogma, here's the rules, um, here's what others have done. Now copy that, and I'll give you the A. And I just had no interest in it. What was fascinating to me, the very first day of the fall semester of the first semester last September. I remember walking into the room and everyone's sitting around a table, and it was just like people who were uh, Balchuva, people who weren't religious at all, people from Italy, people from New York, people from California, short story writers, memoir writers, fiction writers, stand-up storytellers, and it was just like, wow, there's an energy here that I didn't expect, to be totally fair. To,
Yeah.
because I was
Yeah.
very unfair to JTS. I was like, this is going to suck so bad. Oh my God. And it was just like, it wasn't at all what I expected. Uh, it was very surprising and very gratifying. To watch people come in with something that means something to them, but
Hmm.
don't know what to do with it.
Hmm.
And, you know, I, as someone who's written now for 40 years, I've spent a long time just trying to figure out what to do with those Lego pieces when I have them. How do I put them together? What do they mean? How are my Lego pieces different than other people's Legos? And it's really gratifying to see people in a short time, relatively short time, really start to make progress. I kind of hate them a little bit because it took me a lot longer than it's taking them.
Yeah, yeah, and it's been really interesting to me how people have actually embraced what we're trying to do. And even one student said that she came feeling also like you did, Shalom. She came thinking this is going to be, I don't know, questioning. And she decided that if she started to hear dogma, she was not going to stay. And she was really happy not to hear it. So that was really interesting. And I think it speaks to what you're saying. These are people who are not, we have maybe one student who's right out of college, three or four in their 20s, three or four in their 30s, three or four in their 40s, 50s, 60s, etc. So it's a really wide range of people who, as you say, come with something they care about. I think that's really important. And I want to say, we're talking about how our program is um, different in wanting to embrace all genres and have people explore. So that's one really distinguishing feature. And then it is at JTS. So the Jewish is there, right? So it is at the Jewish Theological Seminary, and we are creating a Jewish community. And it's a Jewish community that is together because of the desire to tell stories.
Hmm.
It's not together because we all agree on our position on Israel. We're all for or against something. We're there because we all care about storytelling. And I think that's another thing that really feels very special is to date, we've succeeded in creating a really intimate community of people who care about each other.
Yeah,
People who've
yeah.
gone through life events and have been there for each other and are
I'll
opening up.
say, I'll say one of the really nice things is when we do these Zoom meetings throughout the semester, they always run long with the students. And so there's always a moment like toward the end where another window opens and the next student is there because I'm lined up. And it's always like, oh, hey, how you doing? It's like this nice little weird community. But that's also very gratifying.
Yeah.
Just really quickly, by the way, the student you mentioned, I won't say her name, but she's made some incredible strides. And one of the things that I'm most proud of with her is that, and I think I think a lot of people struggle with this. Uh, it, it isn't so much my second act is boring as the mental game of being a writer.
Mhm.
And for her, she really, really wants to be a writer. And she wants to be a writer so much that it's stopping her. She
Mhm.
cares too much. In some ways, literature has become its own religion when where it began was mocking all of the institutions, and now it's become one. And if you really want to belong to it, you're going to take it very seriously, and that is going to stop you from finding your own voice. And we worked a lot on her not giving a shit, trying to learn how to get past that care. And that strikes me as a very Jewish thing. That's probably my own view of Judaism, but there's that old midrash about Abraham, and his dad went away on business, and he had a idol store, and little Abe was 5 years old, and he went into the idol store, and he didn't believe in all this Baal stuff, and so he smashed up all the idols and put the hammer in Baal's hand. Dad came home and was like, "What the hell did you do, you little bastard?" And he's like, well, I didn't do it. Baal did it." And his father was like, "Oh, shut up. Baal didn't do it. He's just a statue." And Abraham was like, "Yeah, see, you don't buy it either. I'm out of here." And he left. And
Mhm.
Abraham awoke in the morning and he went forth. And that strikes me as always, I always admired that about, I mean,
Mhm.
religion comes from a deep questioning, right?
Mhm.
And not taking the dogma or the rules of the generation before you as a given. And um, that's what I love about it. That part of it I adore. And it's really nice to at JTS kind of go, okay, well, let's, how do we help people get back to that? selfishly for me. How
Hmm.
do we get people to find that energy again, that spirit?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's
That's
so
great.
cool to see him doing it.
Yeah. So Ellie says she has some questions. Okay, here she is with some
I
questions.
pop in, pop out. It'll be like I don't know. I don't know what this role is, but it's there I
You're a
am.
magical creature, Ellie. You can't
I,
deny.
I'm just like in and out. The first question is, yeah, but what happens at 60? There's you said, and at 60 it's all down. There's a question about, yeah, but what do we see? What's going on at 60? And what
All
comes
I can tell
after?
you, all I can tell you is I'm mid 50s and I already can't find my keys and shoes. So that's what I mean. Um,
But we have students that are over 70.
yeah,
It's not an
I
age thing.
I
yeah,
can't find him to pin him up here, but
they're doing much better than I am. But no, it isn't. I've always found, for whatever reason, that when I go on readings, I'm curious, Edgar. We never spoke about this, but I'm curious if this is a similar, if you have a similar thing. That when I do readings, the people who laugh at the craziest, darkest stuff, who appreciate it, are all like over 65. It's like that. It's like the high school, the college kids are like, "Ooh, I don't think we should have said that," or whatever. But the old folks just have a riot. It's so much fun. It's always great.
But for me, I feel that that we grew up at the end of this process where the idea of living your life was kind of making mistakes and learning from them, and I feel so much among younger people that they were brought up in a system where one strike you're out, you
Yeah.
don't make mistakes, and the whole idea of learning anything, and especially how to write, is by doing stuff that is wrong.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I feel like the one of the things that I like to focus on is not so much how to write, there's that, but like I said earlier, it's how to be a writer. That's a very specific thing for me. It's you have to reject a lot of rules. You have to be willing to risk stuff. You have to be willing to say things people don't want to hear. You have to be a little bit apart from the culture and mainstream society and everything else to hear your own voice, to find what you care about, to find what who you are. And that is something that doesn't get talked about very much. But I think it was a huge piece of my learning as a writer.
So I have a question as you say that. And I really was struck with all the students when Edgar and I spoke with them with how much they've taken those leaps. With the students you work with, Shalom, how did that happen? Like what specific things made that possible?
I yell a lot and call them names, and it seems to work. You know what? Honestly, like the people coming in, um, there's always fear, there's always worry. There's worry about it. Is this going to be worth my time? Is this going to be worth my worry, my money? And part of it is just making everyone relax and realize, this isn't an either or situation. You're not here to find out, are you a writer? You're here to think about things and work on yourself and become better at this thing you do that helps you, that gets you through life. Um, Early on when I spoke with Edgar, and he said this, I'm pretty sure he said this at the beginning of last semester when all the students got together, that the point wasn't to have a publishable manuscript at the end of this. It would be great if you do, but the idea is to become better at this thing that you do. If you're a poet and you just like to write poetry because it gets you out of a funk, if you have a story of your family or whatever that you really need to tell in nonfiction, we'll help you through this process. And in the end, you become kind of a better person for it. At least that's what happened with me. I was a bit of an asshole, even more so than now. And writing was therapy for me. Writing was me starting to look at myself. And so when you engage with students that way, where it's not about, okay, so let's talk sentence structure,
Hmm.
uh, or what does a character want? We do get to that. And we start to get to it sort of toward the end of last semester, but the earlier sessions are writing to try and find who you are, to try and break some of I don't know, rules or restrictions or shells that come along with it. And that is a more engaging process. And it's also a more important process. We write, we tell stories, but a lot of it is, it's more introspective, I guess.
Right.
It's as opposed to, I'm going to do a line edit on this short story and then
Right.
tell you why I'm better.
Yeah, I remember years ago, I went to a writing colony, and it was one of the few colonies, maybe the only colony in the country that had children. So people came with their children, and we all lived in our studios, and the kids all lived together in a big barn. And all the adults went to their studios and did what you said, wrote a sentence, took away that sentence, wrote a word, took away that word. And at the end of the first week, the children had an exhibit. And they had written a play, they had made a lot of art, they had created a dance, they had done so much stuff because I don't know, they just felt free to do it. It was unbelievable, incredible creative productivity. And so I think a little bit of it sort of returning to that, like we all want to make those things. But the grown-ups had been taught to, you know, silence those voices. And the children were just like just and their stuff was great. It was really inspiring.
Yeah. That's the other thing is that these guys are doing a lot of work in between our sessions. There's a really good book that's worth reading called Art and Fear. I don't know if anyone's read it, but it's meant for artists, but it's for anybody, putting themselves out there. And the author talks about a test that was done where they gave two groups of pottery makers an assignment. One had an hour to make as many pieces as they could, however shitty they are. The other group had to make one perfect one.
Hmm.
And obviously, the one perfect group didn't finish anything, didn't even get started. Or the other group who didn't care about results and just made a lot of shitty ashtrays had tons to show, and some of them were pretty good. So there is work. People are doing a lot of work in these classes, in these sessions. Um, I don't want to make it sound like it isn't hard. It is. Um, but the goal is not to say, here's where a comma goes or how does a semicolon work, because I think most people know that. I think most people, that's not really the issue that's stopping somebody. Certainly not to the point where they go, okay, I'm going to get on a webinar about the JTS MFA program. It's not about, there's something else going on there you know what I mean?
Hmm. Yeah.
Um,
There's actually a question about kind of how the cohort comes together. And I think, you mentioned Zoom, but that is only one of the components for meeting. Can you kind of describe the process and how workshops work and what residencies look like? And I know that's more of the technical question for our open house down the road, but I also think it's interesting to see how writers are in communication with our cohort.
Yeah, and I think that's actually also an important part of our conversation because it's about the design and about both creating community and giving people space to do their work. So we come together at the beginning of the semester for 10 days, and that's where we get to know each other and it's about to start this coming Sunday for our second residency. So the 18 students plus another one, 19 will come from Sunday until the following Tuesday. And during that time, we have workshops, people talk about each other's work. We have craft classes. We have times we're playing games, times that we're having meals, et cetera, et cetera. Um, and then and then the semester is what Shalom was talking about when you have a mentor and you meet with that mentor once every 3 to 4 weeks and have a session where you send all your work in and you get feedback, or as Shalom said, you get yelled at. Uh, and then that makes you feel liberated, and then you go off to do um, other things. I think the two things really allow for all the things we're trying to have, which is experimentation and community building.
yeah. Um, the residency part is great. It's a lot of fun, and I was afraid that there was going to be, I spent time in corporate America, so I was a little nervous that there were going to be, team building exercises where we break off into groups and have to find treasure hunts and stuff. But it isn't. It's really just a lot of sitting and talking and working and laughing. I mean, For
Mhm.
me, that was the best thing. It started out with a lot of anxiety for everybody, myself included. But very quickly, it just becomes this very fun, safe place to be honest about the things that are holding you back and what you really want to do and why you're really here. Um, and that was by end of day one.
Mhm.
Uh, and so the Zoom meetings are throughout the semester, but I look forward to them. I think the students do. If they're not, they're doing a very good job of hiding it. They're probably all drunk or high or something, but it doesn't matter. I don't care. Um, I'll take what I can get.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, that was a good question. Ellie, do you have another question?
I do indeed. This one is actually about kind of the climate in which we live right now. And in designing this program and in thinking about this program, and Edgar, you might want to jump into, so I'll spotlight you
Yeah,
as well.
yeah.
Is how much did anti-Semitism come up in those conversations? How does it fit into the program? How is that related to the current literary climate? All of the things that we read about. How much of this is responsive, and in what ways does that play out through the program?
Well, if I can answer that, for me, the place in which we meet and write, it's a safe haven. It's a place where we take all the sounds off, and we try to kind of break root in ourselves and take something that we can bring to the word instead of just clinging to something and being dragged after it. So I'm saying that I'm very happy that that some of the students are politically conscious, some are not, some are vegans, some are observant, some are not. But we're not meeting about that. It's like when you go to an AA meeting, you really don't care what the drunk next to you, who he voted for. Your boss share something and you're in a hole and you want to go get out of it. And I think that in this sense, I come from Israel, and and I'm very political, and I come from a hyper political environment, and I always left all that outside of my study. When I close the door and I say I want to write something, I don't want to leverage my imagination to force people to do things. There's so many other ways to force them. We don't need to waste your imagination on that. I really want. We really want in this community to give people the chances to think outside of this grid. I think that that we walk this earth having to answer so many questions. What we think about vaccination, what we think about God, what we think about Trump, what we think about every conflict, global warming. And I'm saying it's like a bag of stones that somebody is carrying on the back. And if you want to do athletics, put the bag aside, train. If you wish, take it back on your back again. But it's not about that. And relating to the issue of anti-Semitism, then what I want to say is that many times we define kind of a playground and then play a game in it. And the game of really for sure, like there is anti-Semitism. I suffered from anti-Semitism, but to say you're an anti-Semite, no, I'm not. You're an anti-Semite, no, I'm not. Then you reduce yourself to something that is so tiny and that doesn't give any space for yourself. When I came and spoke to Lisa about this program, then I said to her, I don't want to have an attic in which I'll hide Jews that write. I want to create a place where people whose definition of Jewishness can be different, or or not aligned, but at the same time that they have this same vision of finding a voice in themselves and sharing it with the world. So I really, really, advocate for all my students, to be good people, through politics or through feeding cats. But the moment that we come and study, then it's really not about that. It's not about which tribe we belong to in the world, but who are we when we close the door and our tribe mates are a few feet away?
Yeah, I think that was really well said, and I found it with the students that a lot came in, not a lot, but a fair number came in with pieces that tended to go there, understandably, because that's our sort of first level of consciousness at the moment. Um, and I struggle with that myself as a writer. I struggled with it from the very first book I wrote. Um, uh, I remember taking it to my shrink when it had gotten accepted for publication, and I was like, I can't do this. What's wrong with me? It's bad for the Jews. And he looked at me and he said, no offense, but Jews have survived worse than you. And I think that's an important thing to take on board. Uh, every Jewish writer since Moses has had to worry about anti-Semitism and could have written about it. The question is, for me, in trying to get myself and writers to find something deeper, is what's the human being about? What anybody can come in and write about politics, but the problem is that no one really wants to. If you think about a dinner party, the first person who says Trump, everyone wants to kill, no matter how much everyone hates him. You're not going to get heard pounding on the podium. And so you have to find more human ways to connect with people that all people sort of connect with. That's the bigger job of writing. And like Edgar said, certainly if that's what you want to focus on at some point, that's great. What I've been telling my students is take a minute. Take a minute to not save the world, right? Take a couple of semesters, and then afterward you can go put on your wash basin helmet like Don Quixote and save everybody. But right now, think about who you are. Think about what your writing is like, where you want it to go, what's stopping you, and forget about the outside world for a minute. Last semester, I gave a talk about a line in the Kafka diary that always meant a lot to me, which he didn't know when he wrote it, but it turned out it was the first day of World War One, and he wrote, Germany invades Poland, swimming in the afternoon. And I'm sure he was worried. I'm sure he was reading the newspapers, but ultimately his job was to acknowledge it, let it pass through, and go write about a guy turning into a bug because his parents hated him. I mean, ultimately, that's what we do. So that's a long answer, but it's had really beneficial effects for people to just be able to put it aside for a minute, put it aside.
I want to say something about it that I think at least for the past 3 years, I've been involved in demonstrations and in silent videos and in ones that you talk and you shout, and even Shalom joined me on one of them. So, and I really want to say is that I feel that there is a clash in me between my political identity and me as a writer, and through those 3 years, when I would go to the demonstration, I would always insist that I'll handwrite my sign with my copyright, because the thing that kind of bothered me is that when I would go to demonstration, then everybody would hold the same sign and chant the same thing, which is really it's great for solidarity. It's great that everybody stands together, but it's not good for writers. It's not good for writers to repeat something that you know and predict, and to be kind of immersed in your righteousness, So I'm saying you can do both, but I wouldn't want to confuse them, It's really like, I remember that one of my sign was, I used to write short stories, now I write signs, So when I come and demonstrate, maybe it's confusing, maybe it will not bring the BB down, but it's me coming there and not me just kind of throwing my energy into some kind of a pool and saying, where are we going? Where are we going? What are we doing? I know it's right, but just tell me how we get to that right place. So I'm saying it's two sides of being human, kind of keeping solidarity and going on, bringing society to a better place. And the other part is connecting to yourself and know who you are in this big game.
So that actually brings me in between both of those answers, between Shalom and Edgar. Both of you talked about this idea of being a Jewish writer and what does it mean, and so one of our participants asks, what are the pros cons of being pigeonholed as a Jewish writer, and is writing for this program necessarily about Jewish subjects? And so I want to throw that to you guys. What does it mean to be a Jewish writer? I'm sure you've gotten this a bazillion times in your careers, and you have lots of things to say about it, but what does it mean in terms of the JTS program?
So I just want to say that, the program is open to Jews and non-Jews. The program is open to Jews and non-Jews who write about Jewish topics and non-Jewish topics. And then it's really what people are moved to write about. And it turns out that many of our students are writing about very explicitly Jewish topics. Some of our students, but generally our program is also just inspired by Jewish storytelling of, many centuries. So that's what I would say in terms of the Jewish character of the program.
So I'm saying people can argue endlessly about what does it mean to be Jewish. It's really like, Shalom and me, we argue about it sometimes, So let's say if you ask me,
only about who picks up the check.
So that's also Jewish, but the fact that we argue makes it Jewish, because I think that we're religion of debating. All our great heroes argued even with God. So the least we can do is argue with each other. The way that we teach is, I call it chavruta, but let's say when Shalom or anyone gives a class, there's always somebody who's not a member of the class in the class, just so people won't be too convinced that the way that the professor is speaking is the only way to see things. So there is a devil's advocate there to kind of bring some Jewishness into it. But what I want to say is that for me, Judaism, postmodernism, love are those wonderful words that that you can put a lot into and take a lot. What does love mean? What does being Jewish mean? So I think that for example, if you'd ask Rabbi Akiva, he would say, "V'ahavta l'ra'acha kamocha." Shalom, how do you say that in English? Let's put your
get off my lawn.
So it's like love. How would you say?
Love your neighbor like you love yourself.
Yeah, which I always thought was amazing, because it never said love your neighbors a lot, because some people can't love a lot. So if you hate yourself, you can hate your neighbor, but don't hate him more than you do. So this is kind of one take of Judaism, and and you can look at people and say, they look at God and they say God is vengeful. So to be Jewish, it means to be vengeful. And another could say God is merciful, and you can say, take it and say, okay, we'll be merciful. But I'm saying that there is a lot of fluidity to it. One thing that one cannot argue is the Jews, it doesn't matter how you define them, we're always very good at telling their story. It's maybe because, or we lived in diasporas and, and we didn't identify totally with the other stories. I don't know. There must be many explanations to that. So I'm saying that you can come and learn karate from a Japanese master, even if you're not Japanese. But those guys, they know how to do karate. And I'm saying we Jews, believe me, we do know how to tell stories.
I will just add to that. That's all true, but I don't know any writer who wants any kind of descriptive before the title writer. Whether it's African American, humor, drama, anything. And when you go through the agony of putting together a book or a piece of work, by the time you're done, even if you think that's what you want, you're not going to want it, because writer, to me, and I agree with everything Edgar said, but to me, a writer is a different breed. We're interlopers in the world. So are Jews, so maybe that's a connection there. But there's a sense that we go through life differently. We tell stories because of the way we go through it. Um, I've heard Vonnegut get angry about being called a sci-fi writer. Flannery again got angry about being called Southern Gothic. Beckett was angry about being called Irish. There's something writers do, and that's what I'm trying to get at in this MFA, that transcends all of that, even if that's the subject matter. I personally start every book and go, I'm not doing that Jewish stuff again. No, I am not writing about Jews. No, I'm done. And I'm a Jew and I was raised with it. And that's my whole sphere of reference, my whole universe of that comes through. But it's not what I set out to do. What I'm setting out to do is find a particular character or a particular thought and find the universal in that, as opposed to going the other way. So, um, you might want to be a Jewish writer, and that's fine. For me personally, I'd rather not have any. I'm not that crazy about being called a writer, to be totally honest, but certainly not by religion or race or American. You know, you go across to Europe on a book tour, and they say, "Here's the American writer," and you don't get a whole lot of applause these days. And I look at it, I'm sitting there going, "What? I'm from America, but I'm from outer space. I'm not from here at all. None of this makes sense to me." So that's where I come at it from.
Yeah, I mean, like, Shalom, you can write a story about somebody who finds Anna Frank in his attic, or call it, a book element for my foreskin, and then, people say, "Aren't you Jewish?" And said, "No, no, no, I'm from outer space."
Right, but it's like I have to fight with myself. I have to fight with myself because I'm like, oh, maybe it's not Anne Frank. I'll make it Martin Luther King. I'll find somebody else. But it just doesn't work. It does my the the source of electricity for me is that.
And
But
Martin Luther King wouldn't have stayed in that attic all those years.
So as we're saying this, I think all this makes complete sense, but then I guess I want to ask, like, how does the program feel Jewish to both of you? Like, how is what we've created feel Jewish?
I'm not getting paid a lot.
Yeah, well, with Shalom for sure there is the complaining Jewish thing.
Right, right.
But again, for me, I taught for many years, or for 30 years, in all kinds of writing programs in Israel and in the US. And the truth is that I like the students. I would like to be in a situation where I share things, and I was always kind of very frustrated, because the idea was that it felt like idol worshiping. It was basically like sacrifice yourself, so in the end there will be this kind of product, and it felt to me very capitalistic, and the way that really Shannon had put it's that you work on yourself. You don't try to manufacture a lot of stuff that you can pile up.
Mhm.
So if I can kind of start going to kind of weird reductive theology, then I really found always there was something in creative writing programs that was very capitalistic, and in that sense Protestant. We're not wasting our time. When I taught in an American writing program, and I asked my students in the first class, what do you want to write? And I would say more than half of them say the next great American novel, then this for me it was something that they said, okay, I'll have to work harder, so those people can write a paragraph, just with the pottery experiment that channel thought about. Now, for me, a Jewish program is really the some of my favorite Jewish words. It doesn't matter Yiddish, Hebrew. It's a balagan. Balagan. What I like about the word balagan is that it's chaos, but it's the only language that I know in which you use chaos in a positive manner. Basically saying, if you go to a house and it's too clean, there's no life in there. If it's messy and somebody wrote, "I hate you, Dad," on the wall, there are people who are living in it. And for me, this kind of a Jewish program, it's basically to allow this chaos and seeing it something positive. You know, when you're MFA, you get points for courage, you get points for experimentation. And for me, it's all about this kind of idea of not complying and not kind of bowing, but rebelling, you know, and kind of going out there. So that's the Jewish thing for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for me, there's that, but there's more of a spirit, a Jewish spirit that may not be what people watching this or thinking about going to this MFA consider Jewish spirit. But, you know, like I said earlier, Jews to me are wonderful troublemakers. There's a reason they chased us out of Spain. They probably should have. We make trouble. You know, we're the sand and the Vaseline. We're Spinoza and Lenny Bruce and Kafka and like they're and Abraham. We push back, we question, we're really irritating because we talk about things and we think about things and we don't settle for easy answers and uh, that to me is really precious. And there's something about fiction, or maybe it's all culture in the past 20, 30 years, and I don't pretend to know why, but it's become this sort of Big Macization of everything. They all look the same. It's a factory. It's going to come out. You're not going to die if you eat it, but you're probably not going to come back again. And I miss that. That's what I'm trying. That chutzpah,
Mm-hmm.
you know, that we have, and that people get irritated by. But you know, I don't give a shit.
Yeah, great.
Well, we started tonight by talking about the dogma of other writing programs and the beautiful sentences. And I kind of want to know, and this was, asked what you guys have expressed throughout what you think makes the JTS MFA different, but are there any rules? Is there any dogma within the world of the JTS MFA? Anything that you're like, this is our hard and fast that we stick to, this is the red line? No beautiful sentences and
No. And I want to say, I do think it's important to say, because when you talk about rebelling, there's an idea that you're rebelling against. And early on, a really important moment when Shalom was teaching a class about Kafka and the importance of rebelling, there was a student who said, I am not a rebel. Maybe I don't belong here. I really deeply believe in my religion. And it was an incredibly beautiful moment, actually, where she was being totally honest. And I remember, Shalom, what did you say in response to that?
I said in 2025, believing in God is pretty rebellious.
Exactly.
I'm not impressed with Sam Harris. Anyone can be an atheist now. That's not, this isn't Voltaire times. You're not going to get chased out of America. You're going to be embraced. So you are rebellious. Just write, and it doesn't mean you have to write a book, a tract of politics. It just means understand that there's a fire in you. You know, in terms of the rules that Ellie, that the questioner was asking, it's different for every student. I don't know what they are until I meet them. It's usually not dogma in terms of this is what you must do. For me, it's here's what I don't want you to do. So the student that Lisa mentioned earlier, who didn't want dogma but really wanted to be a writer, my only rules were no submissions. You don't talk to agents and you don't go to book parties until this is over because it's messing with your head. And every time you go, you stop writing or you hate the thing you wrote. So that's dogma for her. But it's not literary dogma. It's here's how I think because I've been through similar issues. Here's what I think you need for the next semester or whatever to break through that. It's more
Right.
personalized. It's not a general rule.
Right. And we wouldn't want to create a rule that says no beautiful sentences, right? That just goes back to the same problem,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
People can write beautiful sentences.
Yeah,
They're
the
moved to
first
do.
rule is that there are no rules, you know.
Exactly. Right. And
But the idea is at the moment that you try to comply to something or to avoid something, then that you can't listen to yourself. It's really Winnie the Pooh. I think that there is this one of the stories that him, Piglet, and the rabbit, they get lost in the fog. And the rabbit says, I tell you what we do. We go here, we go there. We shouldn't do this. We should do that. I'll show you. I go here, I go there, and the rabbit disappears. And when it disappears, Piglet says, "Oh, and now we're here, and nobody will guide us." And Pooh says to him, "I'll take you home." And he says, "But how can you see the home in the fog?" He says, "Oh, I can hear the honey jar calling us." And he says, "So why didn't you take us before?" He said, "Because the rabbit was talking all the time. I couldn't hear the honey jar." So I think that all those kind of positioning are just the things that kind of stop us from hearing the honey jar calling us.
Yeah, to give you another example, there's another student who has this amazing life story, and is trying to craft it into a memoir. And he has 10 gazillion amazing scenes, but they don't finish off, and they go off on tangents every 2 minutes. And he can't finish telling one thing in a straight line. So he was sort of like, well, but that's just the way I am. Like when I'm at dinner parties, everyone says, your stories just go off in a million directions. And I'm like, okay, but this isn't a dinner party. This is a book. So we're gonna pity the reader for a minute, and for the rest of the semester, we're just gonna make sure you stick on a narrative line, and let's tell this thing from beginning to middle to end, and just focus on that. I wouldn't have said that with the other student because that wasn't her issue. So it really is very sort of like, how do I, or any of us as teachers, sort of take an individual. I couldn't do this in a room full of 100 students, and I think that's really great that this is a smallish MFA. I don't want to stand in front of a room with 100 students and talk about structure. It allows us to be very specific with everybody, to really get to know them as people. I've met husbands and wives and partners and dogs on the Zooms. I know where they come from, what they're like, what's holding them up, and we can then work on that to get to tell the story they want to tell, or poem, or screenplay, or whatever. It's the same mechanism, but with different devices because everyone has their different thing.
I love that everyone gets their own set of rules. I feel like that's like, what we all want in the world. And hey, you can get that through the JTS MFA.
Yeah.
I'm going to wrap us up for tonight. So we're a very timely bunch. It's 8:00. We thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Shalom. Thank you to our special guest, Etgar Keret, who just happens to be in the United States already, ready for the next residency. We're really excited. And thank you to Dean Lisa Springer for all of you sharing the context and the content of the MFA. Our next session in the series, which you're already registered for, and the link is the same, takes place on January 27th, 7:00, same time, same place. And it's Etgar Keret in conversation with another one of our MFA faculty, Rachel Kadish. And they're going to be talking about how to write maybe. And then we're going to wrap up the series on February 9th.
Shalom came up with the name.
Shalom, how to write maybe. And we're going to wrap up the series with that nuts and bolts session with our students. So you'll get to both meet our students and we're so excited to be able to give them a platform, and you'll get to really ask those like in-depth questions about, so what does this look like? Is it really what they're talking about? Does it, because it sounds a little utopian. We'll see what the students say about that.
Yeah, and then we'll selectively edit it to make it look like they agreed with us.
Of course. Yeah, I mean, it's America in 2026.
Of course, it's all AI anyway.
Thank you all so much.
Everybody.
Thanks.